We will start off this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rice, will you please call the roll?
Andy Blunt.
Here.
Mark Byler.
Here.
Tom McKessie.
Here.
Edward Tate.
Here.
Michael Thornward.
Mr. Thorward is traveling.
Traveling for business, sorry.
Gary Bruck.
Present.
Denise Brooks.
Here.
Marion McKee.
Here.
Joseph Hidalgo.
Here.
Thank you. And I will try and stay on microphone for one meeting. Dr. Frazier, your superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Grupp. Good evening, members of the board and members of our Council Rock community. Well, the first days of school are now very, very rapidly approaching. The first day will be on Tuesday, September 4th for students in grades K to 6, 7, and 9. All students will then report to school on Wednesday, September 5th. We are very, very excited to open our doors. It's only 19 days away, so enjoy these remaining days. I know the countdown is on or is about to be on, and we cannot wait to see our students here in just a little under 3 weeks. Now, prior to that, we'll be welcoming 23 new staff members this coming week, and then all faculty and staff back for 3 days the following week. So certainly a lot of excitement is in the air. To parents, I want to point out that HAC, our Home Access Center, opens to our community this coming Monday, August 20th. In there, you will be able to look at your child's demographic and bus information, elementary school class placements, middle school team information, and middle and high school student schedules. Also, this coming Monday and Tuesday, I'm very pleased to report that we have over 150 Council Rock teachers attending a PLC workshop that we're holding at CR South. We're very excited as professionals to continue to learn and grow together so that ultimately the work that we can do in our classrooms, and remember that all roads do indeed lead to the classroom. That's the most important work that happens in the school district, that work can be the very best that it can possibly be for our students. I also want to offer my congratulations this evening to Holland Elementary teacher Andrea Mangle, who attended a 3-day training in Colorado Springs at the Space Foundation Discovery Center as a recipient of the Dr. Rochelle Abrams Space Across the Curriculum Educator Training Scholarship. A goal of this scholarship is to help teachers inspire students to pursue careers in the space industry by integrating space-themed activities across content areas and throughout all grade levels. I have a feeling that she's going to have some very lucky students this year. Regarding our agenda for this evening, our board agenda, you may have noticed online, if you had a chance to look at it, that much more of the content is now available to the public than has historically been the case. Essentially, and this is from tonight and will continue to be the case moving forward, if there's an item that is eligible for executive session, meaning that it's eligible for the board to meet in private, then that content, any attachments, any documents have not been and will not be made public. Otherwise, any and all information has been and will continue to be made public. So this is a bit of a change for us. I think it's a good change. I hope that you agree. Certainly, we're improving and increasing our level of transparency with the community, which we hope is valued and appreciated. And last, but certainly not least, this is the first board meeting since we received the devastating news that we lost one of our cherished students, Isabella O'Brien, last month after a 3.5-year battle with cancer. Isabella would have been entering 5th grade at Richboro Elementary this year, and in our spirits, she still is. Please join me in pausing for a moment of silence as we continue to send our condolences to the O'Brien family. Thank you. And that ends my report.
Thanks, Dr. Frazier. Very good. Next, I'll turn to our solicitor, Mr. Cox, and ask for you to provide a solicitor's summary.
I'll just announce the executive session, Mr. Drupp, that occurred before the meeting on personnel, and there will be an executive session following the meeting on the same topic. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. We move on now to public comment. I have one person who's signed up for public comment. Has an interesting subject. And I'll ask that if you have not signed up for public comment and you intend to speak, please line up behind the curtain down the side of the wall and we'll call you in turn. So our first, it looks like it's Richard Abramson. Mr. Abramson, just so we're clear, you do not live in Ms. McKessie's district. You cannot come back to the board.
Now, the public's not going to know why everybody's laughing, so. Yes, I'm here tonight to thank Kyle for her years of service to the Council Rock community. So I want to add my voice to, I know, others that will be thanking Kyle both publicly and privately for her commitment to Council Rock. Kyle has been an ideal, exceptional school board director, a role model. I could speak volumes to that. Always prepared, committed, intelligent, and the ability to take complex issues and analyze them and then give an opinion that was both respectful and respected. As a former school board director, I know, to me, one of the most stressful times was when an issue came up that pitted my constituents against the Council Rock community. Having to come up with a plan or decision that was both in the best interests of Council Rock and your constituents is very stressful and sometimes impossible. Kyle had the ability to do just that. She was able to reconcile what was apparently irreconcilable differences between the interests of Council Rock and her constituents. She either developed a plan or supported a plan that was a win-win situation. For Kyle, it was not mutually exclusive what was best for Council Rock or what was best for her constituents. And that's a truly unique ability. So in general, the Council Rock community, your fellow school board directors, the administrators, the staff, all should show their appreciation for your years of service. And in particular, your constituents should show the greatest appreciation for all you have done. I know, Kyle, your decision to step down was not an easy one. I want to say that I, as a parent, a community member, a former colleague of yours on the school board, and as your friend, I wish you the best because you have given Council Rock your best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abramson. Our next speaker is Allison McGann. Evening, Ms. McGann.
Good evening. Allison McGann, Northampton Township. And I too want to say thank you to Kyle McKessie for her decade of service to Council Rock. I didn't know Kyle before she was tapped to run or to be appointed as school director. I had no preconceived notions of what kind of school director she would be. In the intervening years, she's proven to be an ardent supporter of public education and the Council Rock community and a dedicated collaborative force on the board. Some may feel that she's a very quiet board member. She often says it herself. But she quietly gathers information from the community, the administration, and all concerned to make informed decisions. She spent an inordinate amount of time speaking with the public. She has met with or spoken to anyone, not just her constituents or those who might agree with her, about the district. She researches issues and points people in the right direction to get answers. School board is a non-paid position. Kyle has thrown herself into this volunteer job, spending many hours developing consensus and communicating with the public at large. She's been responsive to all, not an easy feat that at times comes at great personal sacrifice. For that reason, the next Wrightstown School Board Director will have very large shoes to fill. Kyle, thank you. I'm glad I met you. I'm proud to call you my friend, and I wish you all the best as you move on to the next phase of your life.
Thank you, Ms. McGann. Our next speaker is Marilyn Scarpa. Good evening, Mrs. Scarpa.
Good evening, Mr. Krupp. Good evening, everyone. Marilyn Scarpa, Newtown Township. What makes a great school board director? Someone who is passionate about public education, desires to advance public education, is committed to be an advocate for all of our children, is dedicated to the betterment of their community and serving to achieve that goal, is selfless with their time, is willing to have their family make numerous sacrifices, is a good listener, is a good communicator, is non-political, serves the entire district, not just their own constituents, and doesn't make decisions based on what is best just for their own community. Relies on opinions of fellow board directors and administration, and when there is disagreement, to respectfully engage anyway. Is sensitive and compassionate enough to consider other people empathetically. Numerous times I had that trouble with Kyle, but that's Kyle. All this and more describes Kyle McKessie. She followed a school board director who exemplified those same qualities in Susan Visadomini. I can say that the Wrightstown community and my portion of Newtown Township that this seat represents have been so fortunate to have such powerhouses standing up for them. I first met Kyle when she inquired about applying for the seat vacated by Susan. I fully supported her, and there has not been a day since then that I ever questioned that. The time that Kyle sat on this board has been one where more crucial decisions had to be made in less time than any other period in the last 20 years. It seems like one monumental change or crisis came one after another. Many in the community may not even be aware of most of these issues, and that's because of Kyle's leadership, balanced approach, and dedication to doing what is right at great sacrifice to herself. She has been that bridge between school board directors, administrators, staff, and community. She has stoically sat while people have at times attacked her publicly and personally and have been downright rude, but kept her eyes on the greater good and the goals she had for serving the entire district. It is hard for me to realize that this chapter has come to an end, but I know that Kyle McKessie has set an outstanding example for her replacement. The bar has been set very high for this Council Rock region, as well as for her fellow board members. Council Rock is unequivocally a better place due to her service. On to new challenges, happy things, and thank you, my friend.
All right. No tears yet.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We will have another opportunity to speak about Ms. McKessie. Kyle, would you do me one favor and make the approval of the minutes for the July 19th meeting? Motion.
I motion to approve the minutes for the July 19th meeting.
Second.
Hearing no objection, I'll ask the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. We'll move on to the topic of the day, which is the Academic Standards Committee report, which will be provided to us by Ms. McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. There was no July meeting of the Academic Standards Committee, so there are no, I have no meeting to report on, but I would like to move to approve consent agenda items B through F as contained in the agenda.
Second.
Very good. I'll ask if there's any dissent. Seeing no dissent, we will approve. I will ask the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Will you continue with item G?
Item G, the redistricting demographic services. Dr. Elliott, do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Ms. McKee. So at our June board meeting, we had a presentation looking at our comparison of our demographic numbers from the two different studies that we had conducted. And we asked the board at that time for some recommendation of which direction to move. And at that time, the board had recommended that we move forward with contracting with Cropper GIS for continued redistricting services. So the contract tonight is, we're asking for the board's approval for this contract for those services to finish that work in the district.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. I move to approve the service agreement with Cropper GIS LLC for redistricting services in the amount of $11,900, not to exceed $18,000, subject to audit and solicitor review.
Looking for objections? Seeing no objections, I'll ask the secretary to record that as passing with unanimous consent. Just a moment there, which is in our new file structure. Now, these attachments are available. I wanted to highlight.
That's right.
All right, I wanted to highlight that. So the two attachments to that, which will be of interest to the public, are the redistricting draft timeline. There's a draft timeline, as well as the other part is the contract that we just approved, but the timeline may be of interest to the community. Moving on to the Living Strong item.
I move to approve professional development coaching services provided by Living Strong LLC for the 2018-19 school year in the amount of $14,500, subject to audit and solicitor review.
Dr. Elliott, did you want to speak to this, or I think
Certainly.
I thought that you did.
Sure. So we worked with Living Strong last year with our principals. They provided some professional learning, face-to-face sessions, as well as coaching in buildings. And as a result of the work that Living Strong did with the principals, the feedback we received from the principals was that working with those consultants again would be a benefit for the teacher trainers as well, to have an added layer of some additional knowledge for our teachers trainers who had received some training from the Peace Center. And we also want to provide some additional training to them to help them in working with the teachers in the building as we continue our work as a district to provide diversity training and training in cultural literacy for all of our staff. So the consultants for Living Strong will be providing 2 days of training to all of our lead teacher trainers, and also visiting buildings and providing several coaching sessions that will be sessions with the lead teacher trainers and the building principal together as they continue their work.
If I may, just to clarify a bit and to elaborate, Dr. Elliott just mentioned how this past school year, Living Strong worked with our building principals. They also worked with our assistant principals, our supervisors, the entire cabinet team, really, in essence, our entire administrative team in the school district. It was an outstanding experience, a 5-part experience. I think it in total encompassed 10 hours or thereabouts, maybe even in excess of that. So we highly recommend this.
Very good, thank you. Looking to my board members for any objection. Seeing no objection, I'm going to ask the secretary of the board to record this as passing with unanimous consent. Thank you, Ms. McKee, for the report of the Academic Standards Committee. We're now going to turn to the Middle Bucks Institute of Technology and ask if there's a report coming from the Middle Bucks Institute of Technology.
We had no July meeting. There was an August meeting last week, and both Mr. Bialik and myself were traveling, so we didn't get a chance to attend. So we'll get a download report back on anything at the next meeting that would be of interest to the board.
Very good. And
I think that there's maybe one comment to make here. I just wanted to note that our enrollment this year is up. So we've always really focused on, in Council Rock, how do we send more kids over there? And we've been managing to do that the last few years. So that's great to see.
Is to be specific with that, our enrollment for the 18-19 school year is at 49 students. Last year it was 42, and just a couple years ago it was 33. So we're seeing really significant improvement in that area.
That's excellent.
Very good. An administrative note, with Ms. McKessie's departure and the ascendancy of Mr. Block to the vice presidency of the board, this will leave Mr. Bialik as the committee chair of the finance committee, which is really taking on, there was a lot of work, that's why we had 2 people assigned. Mr. Block and Mr. Bialik are both currently on the MBIT representatives for the board. We will revisit that most likely at our next meeting together to see about some readjustments so that there is an equal or equity in distribution of assignments among the board. And we'll revisit some of the board assignments at our next meeting. Bucks County Intermediate Unit, Miss Brooks, sorry, Thomas, out of the blue.
The August meeting is actually this coming Tuesday, so I will give a report next month.
Very good. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Violet, for update from the Council Rock Education Foundation.
So upcoming events for the Council Rock Education Foundation is September 7th, 2018 is the back to school breakfast for PTO, PTA, and HSA groups, and that will be here at the Chancellor Center at 9:15 a.m. On October 5th at the Fuge, always a great venue, is the district-wide glow in the dark dance. And then we have the Rock versus the Harlem Wizards, November 17th from 6 to 8 at the High School South. And then we are scheduled for November 23rd, the Council Rock All Rock Reunion. That's a really fun event. So it gives the alumni an opportunity to get together and see each other. We really had a fantastic turnout 2 years ago. It was a little light last year, but still a great time. So, we have students who just turned 21. We got a Stala who came out, and then the most senior alumni was probably in their 60s. So that's a really nice blend of folks. And you see little groups connecting. So put it on your calendar. It's a lot of fun. It's only a couple hours, and we only charge, I think, $10, maybe $15 for the event. So if you're an alumni or someone in your family is an alum, have them come out. That's all I have.
Just for clarification, the glow in the dark dance is actually a student event, a little different than some of the events which are more geared towards adults and fundraising. This is a student event.
Okay.
Is it not? I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
So more information will go out. Last year's was the first time that happened. It is a district-wide event for the age group assigned, and it's supposed to be a very good event, both providing the children a forum to dance.
I'm sorry. Can I add one thing, please?
Well, I babbled. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Back to the Leave a Legacy plaque campaign. So that's in full swing. If you go to the CR Education Foundation website, you have an opportunity to have some message, family name, or some appropriate message on a plaque that will be affixed to the Newtown Middle School or the renovated Holland Middle School. And it's a great way to kind of memorialize your thoughts for the school district and to support the great organization.
Thank you. I want to kick it back to Dr. Frazier for a moment. He wants to restate the numbers for MBIT.
Yeah, I'm going to correct myself. I said that we have 49 students going to MBIT this year. I was off by 100. It's 149.
Okay.
Last year was 142, and just a couple years ago we were 133. So I forgot, that one hanging out there on the microphone. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. That leads us to Policy Committee, and we're going to look to Ed Tate, our committee chair for policy.
Thank you, Mr. Grupp. Policy Committee meets on the third Monday of every month, except this month being summertime. We met last June 18. We'll be meeting again on September 17. We have on the agenda several items. First, I move to approve consent agenda items B and C as contained in the agenda.
Second.
Looking for any objection. Seeing no objection, I'm going to ask the board accept those as passing with unanimous consent.
Thank you. And the final item on the agenda from policy, I move to approve policy 601 as contained in this agenda.
Second.
Just to make the public aware of, it may look like we're blowing through things and then we have detail on some other things. Most of the items that you see covered tonight, when they're on the consent agenda that is spoken of, was discussed in a prior meeting, in a policy meeting or an academic standards meeting. And those have moved forward with the consent of the board and the advice of the board, and there's a sufficient majority. Items such as this, while this is another standard policy, came out of the committee with someone who took exception to the policy or a different tact on it. and so it was not put on the consent and will be brought in, so it'll be voted individually. We've done that so that it makes the consent agenda appropriate, so that it's taking things that really do have consent and allowing those things that have some dissension to be reflected upon. So I am going to ask for a roll call vote. I was the dissenter in this, and my objection was simply that I didn't see a purpose in the policy. I thought it was superfluous, and I'm looking to reduce the number of policies we have. So I will ask Ms. Rice to perform a roll call vote.
Has there been a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I made the motion. I didn't hear a second.
I second.
Thank you.
Andy Block,
Yes.
Mark Violet,
Yes.
Tom McKessie,
Yes.
Edward Tate,
Yes.
Gary Grubb,
No. Very good. Motion.
Denise Brooks,
Yes.
Marion McKee,
Yes.
Joseph Hidalgo.
Yes.
Other things you may find interesting about the board. We rotate the order of, it's by board policy, we rotate the order of who's voting on things. So it's not one person always makes the final decision. So when you hear me start to speak up, I forgot the order. Finance committee, that would be.
I never knew that, by the way. I
That
never
we-
knew that was the reason. I appreciate it.
It is intended to, so that one person.
Great civics lesson.
Hey, you know, I've got two prospective board members sitting in the audience.
I thought we were just keeping it interesting.
I'm keeping them up to date.
So our last finance meeting was July 12th, 2018. We did not have a August meeting. Mr. Block and I were both traveling on business or away on vacation. We had a very full meeting on the 12th of July. We talked about a lot of issues, including some of the things in front of us today. Natural gas, the acknowledgement of natural gas purchase contract, some tax issues, some adjustments in funds for payments, and we had a discussion about free and reduced lunches. So our next meeting is September 13th, 2018. We're still going to do a presentation on transportation.
And we might give you an update on the year-end financials.
Great. Everyone should tune in for the presentation on transportation. I've had an opportunity to hear from Bob and Andy Rowe about it, and there'll be some adjustments made, but it's really going to be a great discussion. So with that, I move to approve consent items B through E as contained in this agenda.
Second.
Looking like board members, seeing no dissent, I will ask that the item be recorded as passing with unanimous consent, and I'll ask that items F and G be taken together.
Okay. I move to approve the personnel actions as contained in the attachment to this agenda for item F and for item G. I also move to approve the personnel actions addendum as contained to the attachments to this agenda. Do you have any comments for us?
Second, I need a second.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Just so the public's aware, we have an addendum. The distribution is made initially of the first listing, and then there are often additional listings, and those are included in an addendum, which was why it's in two parts. So the board doesn't have to go back and re-review the first item, trying to figure out what changed. Hearing no objections from the board, I'm going to ask that be accepted as passing, recorded by the secretary as passing with unanimous consent. I'll move on to Mr. Frederickson's bid for desktop computers.
So the item H, approval of bid 1856 desktop computer. I recommend the approval of bid 18-56 category 1 desktop computers to Ask Technologies for a total not to exceed $552,770 subject to audit.
Second.
I have a question for you, Mr. Frederickson. As this is a discussion topic too, we were fortunate enough, and we'll cover that a little later, to have an opportunity to get through the new middle schools and to walk through the middle schools. We still are engaging with desktop computers for many classes. Are we reducing the number of desktop computers across the district?
We're significantly reducing the number of desktop computers across the district, but we still need them in certain labs, writing labs, English labs. The high schools, we're still replacing desktop computers. Administrators have desktop computers. There are just certain locations where a laptop doesn't really work. You need it, or a Chromebook, a desktop is still needed.
Very good, thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. I'm looking for any objection. Hearing no objection, I'll ask for the motion to pass with unanimous consent. And we move on to the Facilities Committee. Now, Dr. Thorwart is our Facilities Chair. He is not here today in his stead to describe any items that need separate notation. Mr. Taylor has volunteered to step forward. You want to summarize the meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
And what's
At
going
the
on?
meeting, we discussed the energy performance for April and May. Security update, we talked a little bit about Act 39 and Act 44 of 2018, which Governor Wolf signed into legislation in June. I'll have a little bit of an update on that shortly. Talked about the Newtown and Holland Middle School projects, the Wrightstown Rolling Hills projects, the moves that we took care of this summer, the 4 different schools that we successfully moved around, summer projects, the updates on those, custodial onboarding process with the new APA Level 2, which we approved a few months back, our storage, district storage update through KVK, a little bit about the lead testing for water, which the state is requiring. The details are to come on that. We have performed some of that in the past already prior to this requirement. And the Act 44 Safety and Security Coordinator, which is on the board agenda tonight.
Very good. If you would like to see detail about any of these topics, you're welcome to visit our YouTube channel and look at the facilities meeting. It is, the PowerPoint slides are out there and whatnot.
And to that point, I actually, after our last facilities meeting, got a query from the public relative to some of the work we did on the road, with some significant questions about what that was all about, and was there discussion before the vote. I referred that person to our website to watch the videotape and got a great compliment back on the amount of detail that went into that and the amount of discussion that was had. So it's working just the way it's supposed to.
Very good. We have a motion. I've asked Mr. Hidalgo to please make the motion regarding the school safety and security coordinator. Yes.
I move to appoint Bill Reich, the school safety and security coordinator, including all duties as under the School Safety and Security Act 44 of 2018, subject to audit.
Second.
Very good. Mr. Taylor is going to make a brief presentation on this to make you all aware while Mr. Taylor is setting up. Mr. Rick has been with the district almost 19 years.
You're about to find out.
And, oh, is it in there? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm reading ahead.
Should we bring him up front?
Oh, we could bring him up front. He's a little camera shy.
Bill?
Come
on up front, Bill. Please.
Sorry, Bill. This was not my plan, by the way.
Take your time, do it slow.
So what I wanted to touch base on, we did discuss in great detail at the August 2nd facilities meeting, the Act 39 and Act 44 of 2018, relative to school safety and security. Specific to that, again, as Andy mentioned, if you wanted to see all of those discussions in great detail, it is on YouTube. I'm not going to go back and rehash all of those items we presented. But tonight, the key item, the legislation that was signed by Governor Wolf on 22 June of this year, Act 44 of 2018, which is based on hearings from the PA State Safety Task Force. And as you're aware, safety has become a very, very sensitive and big issue for school districts throughout the country. We've always taken it very seriously. A lot of the requirements that are now law are things that we've been working on and are actually ahead of schedule on, which I'm proud to say. But some of the items that are required as a part of this act are establishing a statewide school safety and security committee, requires a school safety and security survey, which is something that we have in the works, requires an appointment of a school safety and security coordinator, which is why I'm speaking tonight, requires a mandatory school employee training. State police must establish a risk and vulnerability assessment, new definition for school police officer, school resource officer, and school security guard, and establishes a Safe to Safe program. I'm not going to get into all of those items. Again, they were discussed in detail earlier this month. I'm happy to answer questions later on that if you have any. The Act 44 does require an appointment of a school safety and security coordinator by the end of this month. They've put a lot of working parts into play in this act. A lot of the timelines are very tight. Some, can be easily met. The ones that are our responsibility will certainly be met. I don't know that all of the state timelines will be met, but we will see. We're fortunate enough to have a very highly qualified individual who is sitting behind me. He was supposed to stand. Already in place for this appointment. So Mr. Rick has served as a valuable security staff member for our district for over 25 years. He's highly trusted and valued, certainly by the district and by me. We work closely together. He has been with us since 1993. He started as a locker room monitor and moved to a hall monitor in 93 and 94. So he knows every nook and cranny of these buildings. Became a security guard in 1995. Promoted to a security manager in 2001. So for over 17 years, he has been our security manager, looking after all of the schools and all of the security staff in our district. And a really big, important piece is he was a police officer for the city of Philadelphia for over 20 years, 21 years, which is a remarkable amount of time, especially in that position. So the duties that Bill would be responsible for, many of which he already is, administrator who oversees the school police or resource officers and security guards, reviews safety and security policies and procedures to ensure compliance with the law, coordinates training for students and school staff, which is something we'll be working on with the ALICE program, coordinates school safety and security assessments as necessary, and we're working on those items, serves as the liaison with the state committee, PDE, law enforcement, and other organizations. And again, Bill and I work closely together. We'll probably team up on some of those things, but Bill will be the actual liaison. Reports to the school board via executive session. This is a new requirement by the 30th of June, 2019, and every year after. And those discussions as part of this law are not subject to the right to know law either. So we can have those discussions about security and the important things of keeping our staff and students safe without the risk of that, falling into the wrong hands. And coordinates a tour every 2 years of the school buildings and grounds with law enforcement and first responders, which Bill already does. So he's the perfect fit. And that is the quick overview of Act 44.
It is important to note that Mr. Rick, we have a huge district. Mr. Rick is not working alone. When Mr. Taylor talks about the other persons on Mr. Rick's staff, they include a number of people with great many years in law enforcement experience, at the federal level, postal level, and municipal employees. So, the ability to have people who with such longevity in the district means that there's a good level of understanding about what it takes to work with children in a security perspective. We do have some excellent school resource officers. They're in the primarily in our high schools, but that knowledge of where kids are, how they are, and who they are is really something that's essential to making the district work. We always talk about, there's a great deal of concern around someone taking a very active, aggressive stance on something. A lot of the first precautions for the community against that are knowing who people are. Every time you see something in the news, it's always, they knew about them. This Mr. Rick is part of the first line of that. Our teachers are first line. Mr. Rick's coordination is first line. So this is just a logical progression, and that it meets the state needs is one thing, but this is so much a culmination of things we've already been doing. So I'm glad for your willingness to take this on, Bill.
I'll just say that Mr. Rick is the obvious choice for this. We do have a tremendous team in the school district. And that being said, whenever there's an issue of school safety, of student safety in the school district, the first person people think of is Bill Rick. So I know your phone is ringing off the hook all the time. You're getting request after request, not just from north where you're housed, but from south as well as your other 14, 13 schools. So Bill, thank you for the work that you have already done. For us as a school district, we are indebted to you for keeping our students safe. Nothing is more important than that. And we certainly wish you the best with this new upcoming responsibility as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Ray.
Thank you very much.
Looking for the comment? Now that we'll clap, we'll see if you actually got the job. No objection. Unless I hear an objection, I'm going to ask for the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent.
Appreciate it.
Please record the motion.
Okay, thank you.
I need someone to put forward the Plan Con Part I.
I move to approve Plan Con Part I interim reporting for Penn Builders Incorporated change order G1 totaling $470,433.70 subject to audit.
Second.
This is, sorry, wrong topic. Very good. Any objection, any commentary? I will ask the secretary to record this as passing with unanimous consent. I really would like to skip the whole next section of this meeting. I think you all know that Kyle gave me her resignation this evening. Well, Kyle, sorry. Sorry. I have passed it on to the secretary to be recorded as part of our minutes. I will need a motion to accept it, but then let's have a little bit of discussion, just so we could.
I move to accept the resignation letter of Ms. Kyle McKessie.
Second.
Someone has to accept it. All right. Ms. McKessie's resignation is as of today and will become official as we accept and pass this motion. I'll ask first if there's any commentary from the board. Discuss.
Are you going to allow for some public comment?
I am, but I thought I'd let the board take first cut at her.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. Not a problem.
Go ahead, Jim. No, go ahead.
I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, that would really be anticlimactic, wouldn't it? Well, I've been here longest, so I'll go first. We'll deal with that one.
Clock, 3 minutes.
I'll get. Yeah. Good luck.
I'll bring you 15 seconds.
Exactly 10 years ago, the August meeting of 2008, Kyle came forward to fill. We had 2 vacancies at the same time. It's a very disruptive time for a board, any vacancy, particularly of someone who's vital and important. And I think we heard someone speak before about Mrs. Visadomini, who was the representative that Kyle had replaced. We also lost Chris Ayu, who moved away at that time. So we had 2 vacancies on the board of people who both had strong voices, strong opinions, not always the same, but it really was a bit of a disruption to the board. And we were very fortunate at the time. We were able to appoint that evening Mrs. Thomas, and we also appointed Ms. McKessie. You had big shoes to fill. I have always said that Wrightstown has always been, or in my time, has been big shoes worn by a little person. But
I'm glad we're talking about my height on the first meeting I came in and on the last meeting I'm going out.
And you did grow. You came in, you know, a little timorous. You know, your experience, it's kind of a large thing to come onto the board. You had not had a lot of board exposure before then. But I think someone spoke about it before, which was you're the communicator. You are a consensus builder. You gather people's opinion. People, I think, value speaking with you, not only for hearing what you say, which is not always so loud or boisterous, but also having the opportunity to speak to you and clarify our own positions as we think of things and to give us challenge. I really do appreciate your time serving. I have referred to you oftentimes as my board wife, as compared to Fran, who is my board wife. Different board, spelling's important. So I really appreciate your time, and I really want to look at Dylan, Kira, and Aiden, and thank the 3 of you. It is not easy being the child of a school board director while you're in the schools, and that you allowed your mom to spend the time with us and to help make the contributions to the community she made for the past 10 years. I appreciate that in you, and We're going to let you have her back for more time now.
So I would say it's been a privilege to serve with Ms. McKessie for the last 5 years. As Jerry said, and everybody knows, she doesn't say much at meetings. When she does speak up, it's usually to ensure that everybody's heard and that things are clear. And I appreciate that about her. But outside of this boardroom, she is one of the hardest working colleagues I've had, if not the hardest working colleague that I've had. She is a tireless advocate and supporter for this administration. And I know you guys will all miss Kyle, as well as for the students and our staff and her constituents. She always puts those folks first before anything and makes sure that we do that to the extent that we can as well. She's been a great friend to me. She's been a great mentor to me. I appreciate her. I will miss you. Probably at least twice a week, my wife is screaming down from the bedroom, "Who's that you're on the phone with?" at 10:30 at night when I'm trying to get some advice. So that won't stop, hopefully. Still count on you. But Council Rock is losing one of its great ones tonight. And we're all going to have to work harder to continue your legacy. Thank you.
So if I may, I'll follow that, given the comments about staff and administration. And I'm going to make this short and sweet because I run into trouble with any other approach. So, and I am going to speak on behalf of our administrative team, certainly on behalf of this cabinet and on behalf of all faculty and staff that we have in the school district. To say that you are going to be missed would be a drastic understatement. There has never been the most remote doubt about your sincerity, how genuine you are, your care, your compassion for the school district, our students, and for all of us as individuals, as people. And I don't have the words to express how important that is to us, how much that's meant to us. So I'll just say that for me, as your superintendent and as a person, sincerely thank you. You are among the very, very best servant leaders that I have ever been around. Thank you, Cal.
I'll go ahead. You know, I've said this to you directly and personally, but you often hear us say and hear me say how frustrating it can be as a board member at times. You're frustrated with how slowly things move and sometimes how quickly things move. We get frustrated with each other, but we all bring different skills to the board and different experiences. And I've always felt, and I've said to you and others, that Kyle's like the heart of the board. I've had situations where I'm frustrated and just spitting nails, mad about something, and I'm able to talk to you, and suddenly I see it from a different perspective, and it changes things. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you allowing my blood pressure to come down sometimes, and for obviously everything else everyone has said, your commitment. You know, public service is something that I think everyone should have an opportunity to do if you're so inclined. It's a tremendous commitment, not just of your time, but your family's time and time away from your job. And we've had conversations in the middle of the day and as we're both driving to work, as we're both driving home from work, or going to family events. And I just, you know, I thank you for all the time that you put in and everything you've done for me personally as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak up, guys. I'm not in control anymore.
First time ever.
I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody said, but for me, for 5 years, just for the last few months, you've been 2 seats away from me, but for basically the majority of 5 years, you either sat on this side of me or this. And so it's sort of hard to imagine sitting here and not seeing you. But, you know, you did something that I thought about in my life, and you took a different route. For many, many years, I sat in the audience and had these thoughts, maybe one day that's something I want to step up to do and be on the school board. And when my children were young, I talked myself out of that. I didn't think that that was going to work for me. And I marveled at how, I know this is going to sound chauvinistic because I know a lot of guys have kids, but it's different for a mom to step up and take that time. And it's a huge sacrifice for all of us and our families, our spouses, our children, but especially so when you have young children at home. And I respect that. And for that reason, I also respect the decision and the fact that your kids sat there and gave a huge thumbs up at the thought that you're going to have more time for them. And that is very special and actually the most important thing, I'm sure, in your life. So I wish you the best of luck and enjoy your family time because you deserve it.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. I, of course, want to echo the kind words of all of my colleagues up here. You've said it very well, and I don't know that I can do better, but I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to sincerely thank you. While I am a new board member, my experience with Kyle McKessie predates my time on the board from when I was a Council Rock teacher, when I was president of CREA. I've seen you when I was in those different positions. I've seen you be such a collaborator, such a cohesive force in our district. And I am so grateful for your generosity to this district and to me personally. You've been a mentor to me, and I expect to continue those phone calls with you. Kyle, thank you very much.
I'm the newest board member.
You can't say that after tonight.
Well, after tonight, I won't be. But I remember when I was calling and left messages, and Kyle called me back, and we spent over almost 2 hours speaking, and she basically gave me a wonderful perspective of the sacrifice and the challenges of being a public servant on a school board, and I really appreciated that. And that's as Andy would speak about, phone calls late at night. It's a great time to get a hold of people, and I really respect that and appreciate that you take the time to reach out and be an advocate for either students or the administration or families, as you would say. But I'm really proud of the work that you've done, and for 12 years to do something like this when your kids are young and are current students. I have nothing but big thanks for you and your family for everything that you've done for Council Rock. And I hear powerhouse, heart of the board. I've heard these things since the day I came on board, and I've seen it in action in the short period of time that I've been here. And I just say thank you to you and your family from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done. Thank you.
Mr. Tate, you're batting cleanup.
That's a privilege. I don't need to say much because you all have said it so well. Kyle knows how I feel. She probably has the greatest emotional IQ of anybody I've ever met. And it has served us all very well. So thank you, Kyle.
We're going to take a little bit of a departure from our planned agenda. We did not have a moment of public comment, but I do know that people have come subsequently. I believe some people may have come in who wanted to comment. And if you want to, please stand by the curtain. And if I do this speech and no one stands up, it's going to look really stupid. Ms. Hogan, please introduce yourself and tell me.
Andrea Hogan from Wrightstown. And Kyle, I now realize why you did this in August. You spared the rest of the board from the line being out the door behind all of these folks to express their appreciation for you. So I'll be very brief, and then I have a 12-minute PowerPoint. When Kyle told me she planned to resign from the board, I was disappointed to hear the news, but not as a friend, as a constituent. It took just a moment for me to realize what I appreciated so much about Kyle in this role. It boils down to this: her humble and authentic commitment to assessing the facts, hearing people out, and building strong, functional relationships, even when you don't agree. And that just gives me chills. It's that approach that I think made her years here so productive. As has been said tonight, school board director is unpaid, it's volunteer, it's thankless, and it's political. And it takes a special person with special skills to do it, especially when you have nothing to gain, when you have no other agenda. Kyle masterfully represented the interest of her district and the Council Rock community at large through some very tough times, unprecedented financial challenges, redistricting, labor agreements, potential school closings, lightning rod issues around R-rated movies and censorship, and tragic loss of life. She navigated these issues sometimes as a teammate, sometimes as a team leader, but always as an interested and engaged community member focused on the task at hand. Kyle's the kind of elected official I wish we had at all levels in government, particularly now when it feels like actual governing is at the bottom of the priority list. So Kyle, Joe, and I thank you for your service. And to the rest of the board, I hope you find a worthy replacement. I think I heard this before tonight, but these are really big shoes to fill. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood.
Bob Hickey, Northampton Township. I'm somewhat unusual, unlike most of the other people who have spoken, and I'm sure I'm not going to be able to come anywhere close to some of the wonderful things that they've said about you, Kyle, or repeat them. I mean, you have done a phenomenal job. But like I said, unlike mostly everybody else who has spoken, I'm not your colleague. I don't sit on the board with you. I'm not a member of a group who had to get a hold of you for one reason or another. And I'm not a constituent. I'm just a member of the community of Council Rock. And I had the opportunity to meet you probably, it's about 8 or 9 years ago. And I would really like to thank you for all you've done over these past 10 years for Council Rock. I've always found you to be accessible. I've always thought you've given your best effort. I've always thought you to be honest. We didn't agree on everything that we've ever talked about. However, I always knew where you stood. And you always played it straight. And like I said, no pulling punches, no trying to sweet talk me, no trying to sweet talk anybody for that matter. Like I said, everybody has said this. But like I said, I'm a member from outside your community, outside your board, outside from any other group here. And I'm not sure if anybody else is here from the community, but like I said, I just wanted to publicly thank you for all you've done. And I do wish you all the best. Take care.
Good evening, Mrs. Thomas.
Good evening. 10 years ago, the land of the giants joined the land of the midgets. That was your words, not mine.
Lilliputian.
I couldn't decide whether I was going to say something tonight or not, but I couldn't resist. And partially, Bob did such a nice job because I do, and to Andrew's point, I do think all the years we spent together, whether we worked together in leadership or just sat on the board together, you did a great job for what everyone has mentioned. But the other thing that most people don't know is anyone who contacted you with a student in this district, you listened to, advocated for, went back for them, made they heard. I know for a fact you worked with kids on the opposite end of your constituency, had nothing to do with Wrightstown, Newtown area. I know for a fact you also worked with constituents there. Hours on the phone at night, hours talking to administration, talking to other board members, always to try to do the right thing and get back to that person. And most of us on the board do try to do that, but I would say that your skill set and your ability, much as Dr. Fraser said, to talk to every individual, constituent, co-board member, administration, teacher, doesn't matter, student themselves, I know you've spent hours doing that. And that is very, very unique. For those people to feel like they can reach out to a board member, it's almost unbelievable. So the amount of time you've put in, Council Rock will miss you. I know you'll still be around, will still be around. But you've done an outstanding job. I learned a tremendous amount from you as I sat beside you for 10 years. And I wish you the best. Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Magna.
Jay Magny, Wrightstown. Kyle, on behalf of the residents of Wrightstown Township, I just want to thank you for your time, your energy, to both this community, to the school board, for the admirable devotion that you've shown to all of us. Thank you.
Very good. We can still talk you out of it?
No, but I have a few comments of my own.
Go ahead.
And I have written them in the hopes that I'm not going to cry. So first, I wanted to express my sincere thanks to the Council Rock community. It has been nothing short of an honor and a privilege to serve as a school board director. I believe you all feel exactly the same way. And while I cannot say it's always been easy, I can say with great certainty that it has been rewarding. To our former superintendent, Mark Klein, to our current superintendent, Dr. Frazier, wonderful men, thank you so much. I've learned great things from both of you. To this most amazing group of cabinet members, I count you among my friends. I have enjoyed every conversation I have had with every one of you. To our administrators, to our teachers who are so deep in the trenches every day, I applaud and admire you all. You make it look so easy when it rarely is not. It's been an inspiration to watch you remain singularly focused on what's best for our kids, despite the frequent obstacles in your path. The collaborative nature in which we have worked together is incredibly special. I don't think it happens everywhere. Getting to know you has been a tremendous opportunity for which I will always, always be grateful. Mr. Cox, I would like to thank you for years of calm demeanor, wise counsel. You have a great wit, which probably everybody doesn't have an opportunity to see. You are a consummate professional and a true gentleman in every sense of the word. To my colleague board members, who during some weeks I have spent more time with than my family, the work we do together can be challenging at times and sometimes a little bit dysfunctional. But this board always works together to serve children first and this community, to provide the best quality education at the most reasonable cost. With no disrespect to our surrounding districts, I am certain we work harder than most. There is not one of you at this table I haven't learned something from. I would like to thank Wendy for showing up tonight on what is her birthday. We began this journey together, and it feels very fitting to leave just 10 years together in the same fashion. I wish each and every one of you the best moving forward. So here's where I might cry. Finally, and most important to me, I would like to thank my three girls. My eldest, Dylan, who is currently in Pittsburgh, and Kira and Aiden, who are in the audience tonight, who clearly had better options for plans than sitting here. Serving on this board is a commitment of time and energy, and no one knows that more than my children. I will always consider this, for me, to be the body of work of which I am most proud of, other than raising the three of you. I have not been home on Thursday evenings for 10 years. I have missed events in your life. I have logged hours on the phone in the evening and on weekends that I could have spent with you. And other than the occasional eye roll, Kira, you rarely, if ever, complain. I wanted you to be here tonight it was important for me that you be here tonight so that I could publicly thank you. This was not just my commitment to Council Rock and public service, but also yours. And I am deeply grateful for your support. Finally, to whomever the successful candidate is this evening, I truly hope that this experience will enrich your life in the same way that it has enriched mine. Thank you.
I'm just glad we still have two candidates in the room after that speech. All right, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote for the acceptance of Ms. McKessie's resignation.
Mark Violet,
Yes.
Frederick Tate,
Yes.
Gary Grubb,
Yes.
Denise Brooks,
Yes.
Mary McKee,
Yes.
Joseph Adolfo,
Yes.
Andy Rock,
Yes.
Kyle McKessie.
Yes.
You can take the name tag with you.
Just not the expensive part.
Kyle, it's been a pleasure. I hope to see you around the community. As other people have said, I think we all would welcome some input, maybe a little less than Rick has given us after he left. And maybe a little less than some other board members who have moved away and continue to write to us. But we will, and it's much longer to take a dismissal than that one. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute pause while we reset at this point to begin our candidate interviews and to allow people to speak to Kyle privately. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene just about 20 minutes after the hour. Thank you. We'll have recess. the thing. Under the school code, we have 30 days from the date of Kyle's acceptance of her resignation to appoint a board member. We have moved forward. We did provide notice to the public at our last meeting of Kyle's intention to resign. The deadline for submission for applications to be on the board was on August 9th. In the course of that, we received 4 applications of people who were interested to be on the board. We had confirmed that all 4 were eligible under the laws and regulations that are required. In the course of the last week, 2 of those persons have chosen not to continue their candidacy. We do appreciate their coming forward. I will make the public aware. I will make the board aware, as I did in earlier correspondence. I did invite all candidates to my home over the weekend to allow the candidates to meet one another, so they could also judge who they're working, who would be potentially running against them, and so that they also have the opportunity to self-select if they think that someone else is well qualified. It was very collegial. I really do appreciate the candidates who came. Following that, we have had 2 of the applicants decide that they were not going to continue. We are very fortunate to have 2 candidates before us this evening, both Kristen Marcel and Carolyn Purcell Reichenbach. I'll work on that. Reichenbach. Both have been reviewed by our solicitor as being complying with the laws required as electors from within the district that Ms. McKessie had represented. And our course of the evening will be each of the respondents will have we'll have about 2 minutes? 2 minutes to make some opening remarks, and then we'll go down the board, and board members can ask a question of one person. We'll start with one. That person will have 90 seconds to respond to that. The second person will have 60 seconds to respond. Board member can have a follow-up, and then we'll just work our way through the board. Board members, you can pass if you don't have a question, and we'll continue going around the board in that manner until we've exhausted our questions. After that, we'll move into the part of deliberation or indicating from the board who they intend, who their first preference is, and we'll go from there. I do have to tell you, after having met with both of these candidates, I'm very pleased to have the caliber and the quality of the candidates come forward. I do want to make a representation to you all that as we sat and spoke at my home as a group, both are collegial and collaborative and speak well and communicate well as a group together and seem to be willing and eager to work with a group such as our board. I'm very pleased for that. And so with that, I'm going to look at Carolyn and ask if you'd like to make an opening statement.
I would, thank you. Good evening, I appreciate your time, especially as it's a lot later, I think, than we thought we would start this process. My name is Carolyn Purcell Reichenbach. I've lived in the Newtown area for 20 years, the last 5 being a resident of Wrightstown. My husband and I moved our children here. I have 4 children 5 years ago solely for the purpose of education. I applied to fill Ms. McKessie's vacancy just recently. It was not a decision I took lightly. It was one that I actually ruminated on for a while, but I thought it was really important. I'm a strong believer in the education system, especially Council Rock. As I said, we moved here just for that reason. I have 4 children, as I mentioned. They are in 3 different schools. I have 2 going into the high school at North, 1 in the middle school, and I have 1, my littlest one is at Newtown Elementary School. By way of background, I'm a lawyer. I've worked at 2 of the major law firms in the area in the past. I'm a board member at Wood Services. I'm also a board member at Allies, Inc. in New Jersey, both of which provide special services to special need individuals. I have, in addition to 4 children, I have a disabled brother. So that's something that I take very seriously. I'm his guardian, and I am a strong proponent of special needs and children with learning disabilities. As a person, I can tell you that I'm a very hard worker. I have a strong work ethic. I have a strong ethic background. I'm an honest person. I'm a reasonable person. If I don't understand something, I will absolutely ask questions. I have no problem saying I don't understand what the situation is. I have strong integrity, and I'm honest, really, and I have sound judgment. So that's who I am as a person. Anyway, I would welcome the opportunity to be on the board. I think Council Rock's an exceptional district. I think it's an exceptional school district, and I really think that it would be nice to continue.
Very good. Thank you very much. Kristen, would you have an opening comment as well?
Thank you. My name is Kristen Marcel. I wanted to also thank everyone for their time this evening and for considering my candidacy tonight. After hearing such kind words about Kyle McKessie, I can say that both Carolyn and I are both honored to be considered for her seat. I was really overwhelmed by how many nice comments everyone has. So I just wanted to say that I'm honored to be sitting here and to potentially represent the Council Rock School District as a whole. Council Rock has been a very important part of my life, starting when I attended kindergarten actually in this building many years ago. I've spent time living in Newtown Borough, Holland, and Churchville during my childhood, and now I live in Wrightstown, and I was a graduate of Council Rock High School in 1995. I also have a family history with the district since my father and my stepmother were both teachers in Council Rock, and my dad helped to run the Gifted program many years ago. I still continue to meet students that have that remember my stepmother and my father, and it's always I'm very proud of them because I get to hear the positive influence that they've had on people that are now my age and older, and it's really special. Education and hard work have always played an important part of my life. I strongly believe that Council Rock provided me with a very strong educational foundation. I'm very thankful for that. And that is why I support public education and Council Rock's teachers, administration, and staff very much. This belief actually led me to become more involved with the school board and the school district during the master capital planning process and more recently redistricting. Since then, I've enjoyed continuing my involvement by being part of the Wrightstown PTO and also the Parent Advisory Council that Dr. Frazier runs. I don't take this decision lightly. I've spent the last few weeks talking to leaders in Wrightstown, as well as friends and family, aware of the time commitment and demands of the position, but I am also very committed and take great pride in the Council Rock achievements and many of the students here. I know that there is a lot of time that is needed for this position, and I'm committed to that 100%. I did work full-time while obtaining my master's degree, and so I'm aware of the importance of prioritizing and making sure that your time is being managed well. I have a few more things I can mention in questions, but I just want to say I greatly appreciate your consideration tonight, and I look forward to answering the questions that you have this evening.
Thank you. We'll go round robin on the board. I think
Started over here last time.
Did we? Okay, I'm sorry. So I will ask that our first question be directed to Kristen. I will call you Kirsten. I apologize.
It's okay. I'm used
To
to it.
Kristen, Ms. Brooks, if you'd like to ask the first question.
Sure. So your applications are available online. We all received it. So I think the appropriate starting point, just to get it all out and so we're all on the same page for the benefit of the public, if you could just give us a little bit information about your background, why you think it's suited for the school board. And since you both mentioned that you gave this a whole lot of thought, I'd be curious to know how you ultimately decided that. And I know you resist the urge to say, like, you guys look like you're having so much fun up there and you wanted to do that. But I'm curious to know what it was that made you decide that this was the next step that you wanted to do.
Begins with Kristen.
So my professional background is in public relations, and I think that I was very interested in this position because of in my professional career, I'm known as like the diplomat in the office, and I am always sent to help clients to understand things through difficult situations, and I very much am interested in perception and reputation management. I just think that for me, those are talents that I can help bring to Council Rock. My decision was, my husband probably had a harder time with it, but I think that he's used to me coming to meetings and being involved. And so I think that through my decision, it was really just wanting to continue my involvement and wanting to help to continue the pride that I have at Council Rock as an alumni.
Very good, thank you.
I actually, the first set of the question was skills, I guess. So as I said, I'm a lawyer, so I think that actually is a very good thing to have a legal background in almost anything a person does. I have been an advocate in the last several years for the disabled. I can tell you more about that if you really want to know about it. It was in my resume. I'm a parent. That's the most important thing, really. I value education. Between my husband and myself, we have several degrees. It's allowed me to get to where I am personally and my husband is. But for education, I just don't know that I would be sitting here in front of you right now. So it's really a critical part of who I am. The decision to run was not an easy one. I contemplated it. It was not so much that I didn't want to do it, because I've always thought I wanted to do that. I thought I wanted to be on the board. The issue for me was my children. I have 4 children, and I had to really discuss with my husband and my kids what the impact would be on my children. And we decided ultimately my kids are resilient, and they've been resilient for years. So I'm not concerned about that.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Brooks, do you have a follow-up?
Not right now.
Very good. Mr. Bialik, your question will go to Ms. Reichenbach. And you'll have 90 seconds. It's 90 and 60.
First of all, I want to thank you both for stepping up. This is people say thankless a lot. You've heard me say we get plenty of thanks in this job, but it's a difficult job, and you've heard about it all the time. And I thought I was talking about this position with one of my colleagues, and they said, they seem to be going into it with their eyes wide open. And I said, they have no idea. They have just no idea the amount of time that they're going to spend. But that said, I appreciate you stepping up. It's very, very important. You both are very qualified, and that's great to see. You both are from Wrightstown Township, and I really would like to hear this from both of you. I guess I'll have an opportunity. And so you know that we went through a lot of discussion. We decided to keep the school open in Wrightstown, and we're expanding on that school and doing some renovations. One of the most important decisions that a board member is going to have in the next several months, hopefully done by the end of the year, is redistricting and how do we send these kids to the schools that we now have. Understanding that, in my opinion, many people who fought to keep Wrightstown open, their kids probably will not attend that school. What are your thoughts on that, and do you have any bias on that?
Actually, I wanted to applaud you for keeping Wrightstown open. I think really as a member of the Wrightstown community, you can't really truly appreciate, unless you are a member, how vital the school is to the community. I have 4 children that were transitioned to Newtown Elementary, so I understand the whole redistriction process completely. All 4 of my children transferred. I think I probably was the only one who had that many children in the district to go through it. It wasn't a great success at first. My last child's there now at Newtown Elementary from Wrightstown, and it has been a tremendous success for her. But I think that was the avenue paved by her kids. So I think it takes a lot of effort and energy to make the right decision on that. But I think as a school board, we need to, consider the population inequality of the different elementary schools. So I think that's critical to that. I just want to also point out that making the decisions about redistricting and keeping Wrightstown open have been difficult ones. And as a constituent, I really appreciate the due diligence that you all took and embarked upon to make those decisions. I know they're not easy.
I would agree with Carolyn. Obviously, it was a difficult time for many people in the district, including Wrightstown. I think, because I have children, or one child that is at Wrightstown, one hopefully will eventually be there. I still have a lot of people that talk to me and ask me what's going on. And I think that we really need to, look to the redistricting committee, the work that is going to happen, and that, overall, it's hard to say, I don't think that definitely there wouldn't be any bias, but I think that the process just needs to be fair and transparent. And that's for Wrightstown and everyone throughout Council Rock. Because I'm from different parts of the district, I can really appreciate the fact that this needs to be something that's balanced for everyone in the district, and Wrightstown needs to be considered, but that they're not the only ones that need to be, focused on. This really needs to be shared throughout the district.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up?
No follow-up.
Very good. My question will initially go to Kristen. I think you see that the board is run by a series of committees, and I was interested to know which committees you would, everybody takes a certain passion around one committee or maybe 2. where does your passion lie amongst our committees, and what prompts that passion. So Kristen, it's for 90 seconds.
Thank you. After being at many committee meetings or listening to them on my phone while I'm at the gym, I can see that there's a lot of work that is being done at them. And so I think that it's really important for whoever is in this board seat to be at a lot of the meetings to learn. I look forward to that if I am selected. But I also think that it would be important for me to speak to the board members about where I can be most helpful. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm not sure, where the best work for me may lie. I am most interested in the policy committee because of my policy background, but I would say that I would love to learn more about all of the committees, and that I am more familiar with the facilities committee because of the Wrightstown, construction process, but I would like to learn more about some of the other areas as well.
Very good, thank you.
I think all the committees actually are very important, so it's kind of hard to say specifically which one I would gravitate towards more. At Woods, I'm on the facilities committee, so I understand really what's involved in that committee. I think it's probably very similar in a lot of respects to what goes on at Council Rock, to be honest. But I also think the academic standard committee is very important. It sets the tone for the district. Our district we're here to educate students, and that has to really be a priority in all the actions and decisions that we take as a board and a community. And also, I'm not going to dispel any concerns here, but I also am a policy junkie too, so I like that as well. I think structure is important for our children and for the community.
I'm juggling things but I'm thrilled to hear someone wants to do policy. I'm gonna put off my next question. We're gonna look to Mary Ann McKee for her question.
Thank you. And thanks to you both. I'm really impressed with, your background and your willingness to step up. So thank you both sincerely. Since we were talking about committee work, and of course, this is an area very dear to my heart as a former teacher, and I hope my question is not too specific for you, but as parents of children in Council Rock, one function of a school board director has to do with curriculum, developing curriculum, adopting curriculum materials. In your experience, would you, in just kind of big picture, be able to identify some areas of success or perhaps areas in need of improvement in terms of our delivery of instruction within the district?
I think Council Rock actually does a superb job overall. I can't speak as well to the high school just because my children are entering it now. If you ask me in 6 months, I'll probably have a much better answer for you. But I have spoken with friends whose children have gone through it. And I think probably one area I think Council Rock spends a lot of time with special needs, and I think that's fabulous. That's true, near and dear to my heart. But I also think that we have kids that are on the higher end of the spectrum, and they're not forgotten, but I don't know that they have the same opportunities. So recently was talking to a friend of mine who said that it was difficult for her child who was ready for an AP class to take that AP class without first satisfying an honors class, and that didn't seem right. So I think there are some areas that we can improve in that. I think as a board member, the board's got to look at the higher picture of what our academic standards are. Thank you.
And I would add that probably the opposite of Carolyn, I have the elementary level experience because of my daughter being at Wrightstown. I've been really impressed with some of the ways that technology has been brought into the classroom. My daughter uses her Chromebook so much. She knows how to use First in Math. There's so many pieces of curriculum that are done really well. I know a number of children in her class compete at First in Math so they can get the highest score. And so I think that I obviously am not someone with an education background. So I would look to both, people like yourself, Ms. McKee, and people within the administration to refer me to the best ways in terms of academic standards. But I think that overall, there's been a wonderful focus. And clearly that's seen in the results that the district has compared to other areas.
I want to thank you both for coming today. It's going to be a hard decision because I think you're both very qualified with what I've seen so far. I guess when you come onto the board and you're now in a place of responsibility, you find that there are so many obstacles or challenges that we face, and you're almost blown away with how quickly things move sometimes and frustrated when things move slow. But things are doing, we're on a good path. My question would be, besides redistricting, which is very much at the forefront of everybody's mind, maybe and maybe that's not your top challenge that you think we face, but I was wondering what you would think is important to you that and some of the challenges that we face. Which ones would you like to take part in or that are important to you? And who's that go to?
Kristen begins because she answered just now.
I agree that redistricting is a large issue. I think that it is, difficult timing to be stepping into that at this moment, but I do believe that there's a way for the district to work together and to be unified on that. So I'm trying to be optimistic about that. I believe that as a parent, school security is huge, for everyone. And so that's something, while I don't know a lot about it, I think it's such a huge issue for us to be dealing with right now. And I think that the budget continues to be an issue that I pay attention to. I'm not a numbers person, but obviously, fiscal responsibility is very important to me. And I think that the reality of pension issues and healthcare costs going up, they're just things that will continue to be a part of the financial challenges for the district. And so I really think that it's important to look at, long-term what that will be. So those are 3 issues that I'm focused on.
I would actually kind of just piggyback that. I think that all those are very valid points. Facilities, I think, is a huge issue. It's not an easy issue because oftentimes it involves discussion of where we're going to come up with the funds to do it, whether we should raise taxes. It's not an easy decision, and I'm sure as board members, you're constantly asked by the community to take a certain position on that. I think that's really one of the hardest things, and that's one of the most important things that I think is critical. Security, just like Kristen said, is a very big issue. Speaking with my 9th grader coming over here tonight, she told me there are times, sadly, when she doesn't necessarily feel 100% safe in the school. That might be just my daughter, to be honest with you, but that is a concern as a parent. So I think that that's something as a district we need to really look into, and I was happy to see the appointment of the security officer today.
Thank you.
Mr. Tate.
Thank you. Again, thanks to both of you for expressing your interest, taking the time to do the homework and to be here. So thank you very much. It will indeed be a difficult decision. This is a broad question and maybe a little bit repetitive or redundant, but I'll try to give you an opportunity to give a little bit more of your perspective on our district. What do you see as, particularly based on your experiences as parents, the strengths of this school district?
I think that goes to me, right?
Yes.
I think we have an exceptional school district here. I've never doubted that. My husband and I, before we decided to move from a neighboring school district, we really did our homework. We looked at a lot of test scores and ultimately decided that Council Rock was where we wanted to be. None of us has been disappointed. My children are glad that we're here. They've told us they're receiving a better education than they think they had at their prior school district. I value education it's just such a critical thing to where I am as a person. I come from a family of teachers. It was impressed upon me at an early age that education was important. So I think that Council Rock does an exceptional job. The rankings we get every year are consistent, and it's nice to get good rankings. I think that we need to look at them and say, why aren't we a little bit higher? What can we do to, we need to basically leverage that and say, obviously, we're having a little bit of shortfalls maybe somewhere. Where can we do to improve that? But generally, I think it's an amazing district, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of it.
Thank you. I would agree with Carolyn as well. I think that everyone, wants to be in Council Rock. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people want to be in Council Rock because of the strength of the school district. I recently sold a home, and my house sold in literally a day and I think most of that is because people want to be in this area and they see the quality of the education at Council Rock. I would say as a parent, my daughter's going into 3rd grade last year. She was in 2nd grade. On the first day of school, she came home from school and said she had the best day ever. And when I asked her why, she said because of her teacher. And so that, to me, drives home exactly why I moved here or back here, and just made me feel really good as a parent.
Mr. Block, your question is to Kristen.
First, thank you to both candidates for stepping up. Really qualified, incredible resumes. So I don't think there's a wrong decision for us to make. So that's great. Being a school board director is a tremendous commitment. You don't, and I think some folks said that, you don't know what you're getting into until you're kind of here, and you really don't get comfortable till you've been here a while. The learning curve is tremendous. There's a lot to read. There's a lot to do. It's like anything else. It's what you make it. You can show up on, one Thursday a month and, do it that way, or you can do what everybody here does. And that's tireless hours on the phone and committee meetings and doing what we need to do. It's a big decision. I'd like to understand from each of you, and you mentioned it a little bit in your opening statements, but I'd really like to understand what you did to understand the job, the board, and the challenge that this would be from you, how you went about, what was your process to understand if you wanted to do it, kind of what you learned and what motivates you to want to serve. There were 4 candidates who jumped in, there's 2 here. So I'm interested in understanding the process that you went through to get to this point.
Are you finished? So the process that I undertook, there's obviously a lot of conversation with my family first. Following that, I spent a lot of time speaking to people in Wrightstown. Actually, after Ms. McKessie announced that she would be resigning, a number of people were texting me, you should run, and encouraging me. And so I think that made it a little bit easier, just because I felt like there were people within the community that were really interested in having me step forward after being through so much with the master capital planning and having so many touch points in the community during that process. I think I also reached out to all of the board members. So I appreciate all of you taking the time to speak to me and talking to me about how candid, being very candid about how much time is required of this. That time commitment, while it is hard because I work full time and I have children in the district, it's not something that, scares me in any way. I have always been able to figure out how to make it work. And when I was, I was the communications director at the DOT years back, and I was on call if there were bus crashes and things that were occurring. And so public service to me is just part of my life. It has been, and I think it's a great thing to be able to do.
For me, I probably come from a little different perspective. I've been on the Board of Woods Services for the last couple of years, and also on Allies in New Jersey. And I think those have been tremendously helpful for me to better understand what is involved in being on a board. There are a lot of reports you have to read, and there are a lot of reports that you have to go through and digest and understand. There are a lot of relationships you have to build. There are a lot of questions you have to ask. It is a huge time commitment. I was, a couple years ago, I was put in a situation where my brother was going to be forced to leave his house. My brother was special needs, where he lived for 35 years. And it was a huge, just completely scared the heck out of me, to be honest with you. But what I did was after a day of basically crying, I regrouped and I decided I'm going to fight this. And I knew it was going to take a lot of time, and it did take a lot of time. But I know that the time commitment's always been there. I think it's an excellent example for my children to see me make this kind of a time commitment. They understand the value of what I'm doing and that it's important to me. And just one last thing was I was encouraged by a lot of people to do it. So I appreciated that, but made me feel a little bit better that I'm not biting off too much doing this.
One follow-up, if I could, Mr. Grote, please. So, Ms. Reichenbach, you mentioned you sit on 2 boards.
I do.
Today, and Ms. Marcel, I'm not sure if you sit on any other boards, but my question would be, do you plan to step off of those 2 boards if you are appointed tonight? And Ms. Marcel, if you sit on any other boards, the same question would be to you.
I actually do not. I've checked with Woods and with Allies, and they said there's not a conflict. My meetings for both those organizations are in the morning. They always are in the morning or the early afternoon, so it wouldn't be conflicting with any of this. So I have no plans to do that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I do not currently sit on any boards. I do help to run a Girl Scout troop for my daughter, and I will not be stepping down from that. I have a lot of little girls upset if I do that. And I also help with the Wrightstown PTO, which I will not be stopping either. And so at this time, I'm not on any boards.
I do want to, as a follow-up, after a brief consult with our attorney, as a school district, we do place students with Woods, that is one of the places we do place. Mr. Cox believes that we will be able to settle that on a case-by-case basis, and that should not be a prohibition to the candidacy of Mrs. Reichenbach.
I just want to add, if I thought it were to myself, notwithstanding what Mr. Cox thinks, I would recuse myself from the discussions on things, and if necessary, any vote.
Very good, thank you. We cycle back to Ms. Brooks. If you have, or choose not to, it's your call.
I guess, obviously, I'm sure you put a lot of time and thought into preparing for tonight and trying to guess like what we might ask you. So I'd rather turn it back on you and say, in the thinking you've done and in the preparation, are there things that you want us to know about you that may not have come out in the questions we've asked?
It's my
Kristen
turn, right?
first.
Yeah, sorry. I would say that the one thing that Carolyn actually touched upon it earlier, she had talked about how, the district should be looking at, surpassing expectations and some of the standards. And I completely agree with that. Since I work in public relations and a lot of our clients come to us to become industry leaders, we always are talking about best practices and being leaders. And I think that Council Rock has always been a leader, but we still, instead of just being happy with where we are, I think, even if it's just like small little steps, we should be very, very proud of where we are, but also look at how we can still improve. What are best practices that are maybe worth taking a look at? And, from a reputation management, perception, I guess, area, that's, again, an area that I focus on. And so that would be something that I would also just want to make sure, especially during the redistricting process, that is something that is paid attention to, because I really think that after the master capital planning process, that, it would be a good step forward for everyone to be unified. When I went to Council Rock, we were one school, and I'd like to, hopefully get closer to that instead of some of the other fights that have occurred.
I think my answer to that, to be honest with you, in preparing tonight, one of the big issues I had was learning a little bit more about the district, because there are areas that I don't need to know about as a parent, that I kind of take for granted. And everything I've been told and everything I learned in doing that review was that Council Rock's exceptionally well run, down to the Sloan School, the Twilight School, the Achieve program. I think it's amazing some of the decisions that have been made to pull the special needs interests in to the district. I think that shows your commitment to making sure that every child has an education that's fitting of their skill set and their abilities. I think the last thing is, I've said I'm a parent. I have 4 kids. I have 4 very opinionated children. So my children definitely will tell me things about the district. I learn through my children. I don't know that comes across, but I've learned a lot from my children and from their friends, and I think that serves me well.
Mr. Bialik.
So I have 2 questions. I understand that it may not be a conflict to serve on a board like Woods. I'm not familiar with the other board that you're on. But I've just found in my own professional and personal life that I've had to pull myself out from other boards I was involved with before I got on this board, because it's not only the time on this board, the committee times in this building, but we have MBIT liaisons, the IU liaisons. It often feels like there's always something. So I guess my question to you, Carolyn, can I call you Carolyn? Carolyn, is if you found yourself to be in a position where there's a time conflict, how would you feel about having to resign from like a Woods school if you're committed to this public position here?
Actually, to be honest, I don't think that I would envision there to be a problem with that. I am a very good juggler of time. I have 4 children, all going in different directions. I've juggled Woods for years. I picked up Allies as an additional interest of mine to take special needs advocacy a step further. So I really honestly don't envision it to be a problem.
And then my second question, Kristen, you touched on this a bit. There's a lot of conversation about how great Council Rock is, and it's a great school, but there's always areas for improvement. Do you have any thoughts, Carolyn, on what areas could be improved in the district and how you might be able to help as a potential board member?
Is that to Kristen or to me?
That's to you, Carolyn.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think one thing I've heard recently from parents that I'm know through sports or activities or whatnot, is that there might be a little bit of a teacher morale, which makes me sad, because if the teachers have a morale issue, it's eventually going to affect the children. So that was one issue that I was concerned about. Transparency is another. I think I applaud the efforts to make the documents and all the things that we saw tonight on the board that were approved and discussed on, or a discussion on. I think that's really an important issue. So I would say transparency and school safety. I know that, I think I've talked about that with Mr. Grupp. I think it's excellent now that you can have those discussions off base in an executive committee. I think those are very important discussions to have. And I think Council Rock's done an exceptional job trying to meet the needs of our students from a security point of view as well.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Kristen, you have an opportunity to respond. It's just in terms of fairness, I don't know.
Did you want me to respond also?
Well, the second question I had, Kristen had actually mentioned, that's why I put it to Carolyn. And since there's no board, no, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, because it just seems that there were two questions in a row to Carol. I'm just trying to be fair.
I mean,
do you need, if
I could,
you'd
I mean,
like
I
to
could
have
make
comments you'd like to make.
Yeah. If you'd
I mean,
like to
I don't
respond,
have a board that I sit on, but I do work full time, and so that is obviously something that I have to balance. And so, you know, even through the process for the last few weeks, I've spoken to board members in the middle of the day, before work or after work, and I've appreciated everyone being flexible to, you know, to make that work for me. And obviously, I do need to work, and so I wouldn't be able to forego that. But I definitely would promise to try to balance as best I can. And I am lucky that I do work locally. I have a 9-to-5 job, and so for the most part, occasionally I have to travel and work outside of that. But there is a lot of flexibility.
Could I just make one amendment, just to say that I actually do not work. I have taken a leave of absence from the practice of law to raise my children. So that is not a conflict for me.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is an easy layup, but I need to confer with my partners in crime. Kyle's term, I believe, now we did discuss that this position would have to run. Kyle's term is up this coming a year from December.
The term's not up, but I believe that they have to sit because halfway through.
I know what I'm saying.
Right.
Her term is up a year, or is it?
2021.
No,
Is she 2021?
Right, but
Okay.
but I believe
They would have to run. All right.
They would have to
So
stand
it's a
up.
very simple, it's a layup question. Now I've totally distorted myself. Who gets the question first? It's Kristen, which is, at this point, is it your intention to run we discussed this privately, I didn't ask your opinion when we spoke. Is it your intention to run in the primary and then next fall to continue in the position for the duration of the term through 2021? Is it your intention to do that?
Yes, that's correct.
Same with me as well.
Very good. The second question, so I told you, it's a layup and then there's a hard question. So the hard question is a little different. There is no right, there's no wrong answer. This is not a litmus test. One of the things that this board struggles with is dealing with expulsions. As a district, we have one of the most, give me a nice word to say it. You know what I'm trying to say. One of the most, yeah, okay. Well, it's not strict. It's one of the, I don't want to say draconian either. So we've covered either end of the spectrum. We provide a 45-day expulsion for certain events related to drugs and alcohol. It is not the norm within our area, which drifts down to in other districts to as little as 10 days. The board struggles with this. And as individuals, we are 1 day for 45, 1 day for 10, and we vacillate. I would hope that you have no personal experience with this, either in the past or in the future, but do you have a thought or opinion on a 45-day expulsion for a drug and alcohol violation? This is an example of the things that the board struggles with. Again, there's no right, no wrong answer. It's just a little bit of idea of what goes into your thought process and what would you need to know to help decide what is the right answer. I forgot where I'm starting with the question. Who answered last?
It doesn't matter. I can start. So I don't have as much experience with expulsions. Fortunately, when I was in high school, I never had to deal with that, and so honestly, without knowing a lot about the process and some of the cases that you have looked at in the past, I would say I would want to look at it at kind of on a case-by-case basis, because there may be something that really is 45 days and something that maybe, is less time. But again, I'm not as familiar with the rules and policies, so I'd want to look at that and then, give an answer, I think, after reviewing that.
I think my preference actually would be probably to adopt both positions and have it from like 10 to 45 days based on the circumstances of the case. I think Kristen's right. It has to be on a case-by-case basis. Not everything's cut and dry. There are kids in our district, unfortunately, that come from bad family situations and are making bad choices because they don't have a great parent example. So I think having it be somewhere in the middle based on the facts and circumstances is preferred.
Ms. McKee passes. Mr. Duncan.
One question that person you're going to replace asked me during my interview was, if you're out in the public area and people will come up to you maybe and approach you to ask you some questions or have, I haven't experienced much of that, a little inside joke, but I was just wondering how you would handle that if somebody does come up to you and, maybe it's about redistricting when things get heated or something, and how would you handle that? Vision handling that situation like that?
I believe, Carolyn, that's you first.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, actually, it's an important question to ask. I would like to think that I would handle it as if I were the person approaching one of you to ask you a question, that I would expect and hope that that person would take the time to hear what I have to say. I'm one of these people that really won't speak up unless I think something needs to be spoken to or spoken about. So I would hope that that would affect that. On a personal matter, if I'm out with my kids and we're having a family moment, I might ask the person to call me back, or I would call them back and take their information, because I don't want my kids to be impacted by this process or this job any more than they would need to be.
And I would add that I completely agree with Carolyn, but I would add to that during the master capital planning process, there were a lot of members of the board at that time that did spend time meeting with myself and some other people from the community, and I greatly appreciated that. And even though we didn't live in their area, they met with us, and it really drove home the point that Council Rock school board members represent the whole district. And so I would talk to anyone. I do end up talking to a lot of people at the school just because of what occurred before, to the point where my husband doesn't want to go with me to the school because I just end up talking to a lot of people. But I think it's really important, and if it merited a standalone conversation, as Caroline said, I would definitely do that to make sure that there was enough time to discuss their issue.
Mr. Tate.
Thank you. And to whom am I addressing the question?
You'll start with Kristen.
Okay. Thank you both again. It will be a difficult decision. Hopefully, whomever we choose ends up choosing to be with us for a number of years. So imagine for a moment your first few months on the board or first year on the board. How would you envision that developing as a board member?
From just what I've gathered through conversations with different board members, it seems like in the beginning there's a lot of reading and a lot of asking questions, and so I would probably spend a lot of time just trying to get acclimated and trying to understand and listen to all perspectives, to use facts in fact-based decisions, because I think that's important, but also to consider various viewpoints and not to make a decision in a kind of rash way. Obviously, because I would still be learning, but I also would say that with redistricting happening very quickly, that there is a steep learning curve. I am familiar with the redistricting committee and some of the things that have been occurring since the process started last year, and so I think that would be helpful. But I do know that there is a tremendous amount to learn, and that it's definitely not an easy undertaking.
I would second that, to say the learning curve, obviously, whether you've been on a board or not, is going to be steep. I mean, Council Roxy, just a very large district, has a lot going on. So my answer to that would be really spend a lot of time on the learning curve, ask what questions I needed to ask, find out who knew the things that I needed, who knew certain issues better than others, and ask those people questions, maybe meet them for coffee or lunch or whatever to discuss it, just to kind of do my due diligence. Then I am prepared for board meetings, and I am prepared for questions from constituents.
My last question is, you're both here because of your desire to serve Council Rock. If not selected tonight, it'd be great to hear a little bit about what you've done to serve Council Rock already, but more importantly, if you're not chosen tonight, how will you continue to serve Council Rock? What will you look to get involved in as a result?
And this is to Carolyn.
Yeah, I have been a classroom parent at Council Rock. I've also been a classroom volunteer. Sometimes it's not something that you get selected for because there's so many people volunteering, but I've done that on a regular basis. So I would continue to do those things. I haven't been as involved in the board meetings as I would have liked, just because I've had things going on in my life that have kind of wrapped up now, for better or for worse. And so I really have a lot more time to develop and spend on this kind of a situation, to be honest with you.
And, I would say that I have enjoyed the process of learning more about this over the last few weeks. And in that, I guess, kind of time to ponder about this, I have thought to myself that, regardless of what happens this evening, that I'll continue being at school board meetings and continuing to be a part of the community. And if Carolyn is selected, I will, of course, support her. I will connect her with as many parents as I can within Wrightstown and other areas and, be a resource to her. I think she's a great person. And so I'm happy to help her in any way moving forward. And that, I think just in this process, my commitment to Council Rock, is pretty solid because of being an alumni. And so I will continue to do whatever I possibly can to help the district succeed.
We've now been through the 2 rounds. I'm just looking to see, is there a desire to continue cycling through? All right. We gave you each 2 minutes to open. I believe we give you 90 seconds to close. I don't remember what I wrote to you. I believe it was 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever you want to close. So we opened with Carolyn, I believe, made first opening.
Oh, yeah, she did. She did.
So, okay. So, I don't even know which way to. So, Kristen, you'll make first close.
Thank you.
2 minutes, whatever. I'll keep. If you get to 2 minutes, I'll tell you.
Thank you. I wanted to, again, thank everyone for taking the time to speak to me over the last few weeks, for taking the time this evening. I really, I started talking about that in my opening remarks and then I ran out of time, but I really appreciated hearing about, I've seen Kyle as a board member and I've appreciated all of her hard work, but it's really been nice to hear everyone speak about her because I know in the community, sometimes people would say, oh, well, she doesn't tend to speak as much, during the public meetings. And it was just wonderful to hear about all of the work that she has done, whether it was on the camera or not. And I think that the community would appreciate that. Would just kind of reiterate that I think Carolyn is a great person, very qualified. I'm very pleased that she was interested in this board seat as well. And I really just want to, thank everyone for their service to the community and your time this evening. And thank Carolyn. I know we were talking about how difficult, it's been the last few weeks and preparing for tonight. So I just wanted to thank everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time tonight. I know it's not easy on our side, but it's certainly not easy on your side because you are required to make a vote and to really kind of think about the future of Council Rock when you do so. I was happy that both Kristen and I had applied. It was nice to see people from Wrightstown apply. It was nice to see women apply. I think we're both very qualified. I think our heart's in the right spot. We're very interested in helping Council Rock. We both value education very highly. We're both well educated, and as a result, I think that's impacted our decision to apply for this position. I will say that I'm a very hard worker, and I just promise that if elected or appointed to this position, I promise you won't be disappointed. I will get up to the learning curve as fast as I can. I will do what I need to do to make good decisions for Council Rock and help lead it into the future.
Thank you both. I honestly think, well, we don't normally, as a board president, get to say this. I will say that, and I don't think I'll be contradicted by any board member. It's just unfortunate we only have the one position to fill. I'm not volunteering mine right this moment, but I really do appreciate it.
Motion to accept.
No. Can you stop? All right. So I'm not. All right. So I think both of you should have a lot to be proud of in the way you've presented yourself, in the way you've spoken of your knowledge of the district, of your intent for the district. This is a difficult thing. I know that when we spoke at my home, I said that there's only one of the most difficult times of the year for this board is when we have to think about each other and decide on leadership. This is the other time that is difficult on this board because we sit in judgment of people, and we don't normally do that, and that's not our course. So what I'm going to do at this point, as we did with Mr. Hidalgo, I'm going to kind of ping pong back and forth across the board. And my request would be if you would state your first preference. I know that you would choose both if you could, but to ask you to say the name of your first preference to be on the board. We'll go through the entire board to make sure we have. You do know that Mr. Thorward's not with us tonight by rule. We need a majority of the seated board. So with 8 members, that means we need 5 votes for any one. And so with that said, I'm going to begin with Mr. Block. Again, Mr. Block, if you'll please say the name of the person who was your first preference, and I'll go to Ms. Brooks and back.
Can I make a few comments as well
Absolutely.
around that? So first off, thank you. Honestly, to step up is really great, and I couldn't have said it any better than the two of you had. You're both gracious, great candidates. So it's just we're lucky for that as a board. While it's a tough decision, I'm going to be supporting Kristen Marcel. She's got a track record of involvement with the district with some of the different things that we've done. She's offered unsolicited advice around her in her area of expertise. In hindsight, as we've gone through capital planning and redistricting, I think communications and public relations are something that we can always do better. I think we've started to address that through new roles, but I think her unique experience in that place could really help us. I always look for compliments to the board. And that's why I'll be supporting Kristen.
Very good. Mrs. Brooks.
I normally, when I'm in a situation where I have to cast a vote, I'm not, I don't feel so conflicted. I am so incredibly impressed with both of you. Like I don't even know what to say. Like you are, I so appreciate that you put yourself out there and step up for this. And there's no question that both of you would be incredibly successful. So this is very, very, very difficult because it is in indicating support. It is not in any way an indication that I don't support the other. This is incredibly difficult. But I think that in consideration of what is immediately needed in terms of the things that are ahead for us starting in September, the learning curve is an important thing to consider. And so, for me, I think, Kristen, you offer a certain level of experience within Council Rock that we really will need right away. And so for that reason, that is my preference.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Tate.
I hope that both of you are involved in the school district for years to come. There's a lot of roles and there's a lot of need. This is a great school district, but there's always ways that people from the community can contribute. You're both great candidates. I think Kristen's advantage is a greater degree of involvement in district decisions such as redistricting in recent months. So for that reason, I would be voting for Kristen Marcel.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Mr. Byler.
Carolyn, let me address you first. I think that there's a lot of value to having an attorney on the board. When Mr. Abramson was on the board, it was very, very helpful, not just to hear from Mr. Cox, but also Mr. Abramson's thoughts. I like the way attorneys think for the most part, logically, and you seem to have that. Depends on the attorney.
Depends if you agree with it or not.
Depends on the lawyer. You seem to, I don't know you well, but you seem to process things in a logical way, and I appreciate that. And I really like the fact that you serve on Wood Services. I think it's a valuable resource for our community, and it shows your commitment to really that's public service also. I mean, that's a private organization, but I think that's public service also. I think Kristen has an unfair advantage in this process because I know that while I don't know Kristen well, during the Master of Capital Planning, we had a couple occasions to sit down, and I was very impressed with her thoughts on the issues we were going through at the time, how you handled the process. So I guess I'm speaking to you now, Kristen. How you handled the process and what your and even in circumstances where I may not have agreed with your position, how you handled that, and the support you had in the community. And obviously, when we sat down, it was clear that you were, while you may not have been the appointed leader of the community, you kind of led the charge, and leadership is very, very important. The fact that you're an alum, I guess it's a bias of mine. You're not an alum, Andy. You were here a couple of years, but but no, it's important, and I think it's important to have the ties to the district and deep ties like that, and various ties. And what I mean by that, I think you said you lived in Newtown Borough, you lived in Churchville, so you've lived in different parts of the district, and I think that carries a lot of weight and also gives you a good perspective of things around the district. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting Kristen.
Thank you, Mr. Byler. Mr. Hidalgo.
I want to thank you both again for coming out and putting yourself out there. When I looked at the resumes, I already knew that there was going to be a conflict because you each bring something very powerful and different to the table. And it was going to be a tough decision tonight. And I want to thank Mr. Grupp for his leadership in bringing candidates offering to bring candidates to his house so they could meet each other, and at least whittling it down to two that I was really impressed with on paper. Maybe the third one, but I won't mention that. And anyway, the fact, Carolyn, that you're on the board for Wood Schools is near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate you're a big advocate, and I hope that you'll continue to do that and bring some of that to us. And please, stay in touch and stay engaged. And I very much appreciate that you have stepped forward to do this. And Kristen, I've seen you the whole time that I've been here, very engaged as a parent, and you reached out to me as a parent before any of this even came about, that a seat would be opening. And I just really appreciate the experience that you have put forth and effort you put forward with the school district. So it was a tough decision, even with all of that, because I do appreciate what Carolyn has to offer. But my final decision will be that at this point, my first choice is Kristen.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hidalgo. Ms. McKee?
Thank you. I also want to echo the comments of my colleagues. How fortunate we are to have such exceptional women step up and offer to become a part of this board. I'm very grateful to you both. And I know that you didn't make this decision lightly, nor do we in selecting someone. Carolyn, incredibly impressed with your work, your credentials, and I hope that you will bring that to Council Rock. I hope that you will see how very much needed and appreciated you are within this district and how much you have to offer us. But I have to say, my first choice would be Kristen because of the experience you already have, your experience with capital planning, your very intimate knowledge of the small Wrightstown community. It's a very tough decision to make, but I thank you each.
And so it comes to me. I think you know, and if I haven't said it to each of you, I've enjoyed working. I've met with you, but I've met you both. I know that we spoke at my home, and I think if you watch this board meeting, you know that one of the things that I focus on and have a great concern with, and Mr. Lambert will support that as well, is special education in this school district. It is something which is, it's a club nobody wants to be a member of. And that's it's a large part of our budget. It's a large part of our community. And, you know, while Kristen, I know, you know, we talked also about the cheese stands alone. I think you have a lot of ability. I think you communicate well. Obviously, given the numbers that you're going to be appointed, we'll make a motion in a few moments. But I am going to say that I really have a first preference for Carolyn. And that first preference really, you know, we talked about that before as well, but it really isn't just to say, you know, everybody walks away a winner. I'm not a huge of that, fan of that. What it really says is, as we talked about when we talked about the cheese stands alone, there's an underserved, there's always a part of our community which needs to be served. And this board needs to represent that perspective. And so while it's not going to move the needle, Carolyn comes with special needs, and that's important to me. And so I'm going to, the cheese stands alone. I'm going to say that Carolyn would have been my first preference, but the will of the board is the will of the board. And so having said that, I want to thank you both. I think you've heard it. It is heartfelt from the board for your stepping forward. I have run elections 5 times, and one of the sad parts of those elections is that each time the person who I ran against disappeared after the election. There's a lot to do in this district. There's a lot to be done in this district, and we are nothing without parents and parent advocates and advocates for children. So Carolyn, while you're not going to be on the board this time, you never know. I hope that we don't miss you. I hope that we will continue to see you. And so with Kristen, at that point,
will you take a motion?
Excuse me.
Will you take a motion?
I am going to need a motion to appoint. I am going to need a motion of the form that appoints Kristen to represent Region 9 on the Council Rocks.
I'll make a motion that Kristen Marcel be appointed to fill Kyle McKessie's large shoes and the vacancy in District 9.
Second.
Very good. I believe we do need a roll call vote.
Yes.
Denise Brooks,
Yes.
Mary McKee,
Yes.
Joseph Hidalgo,
Yes.
Andy Block,
Yes.
Mark Feiler,
Yes.
Ed Tate,
Yes.
Gary Buck,
Yes. Very good. Kristen, congratulations. May God have mercy on your soul. Carolyn, thank you, really. It is a heartfelt appreciation. And thank you to your family for offering to see you, to let us borrow you for a few years. So very much appreciate it. Kristen, at this point, we are going to move to have you sworn in. Is your family in the outer lobby, or?
No, my husband is at home with our kids.
No problem. We had discussed that the children were going to get to go to the quilted or giraffe or whatever it is, the zebra type whale, whatever it is, no matter which way it went. But our board secretary, Kapua, is a notary public, and under the rules of states of Pennsylvania, Kapua can swear you in, and I'm going to ask that you stand and raise your right hand And Kapua will administer your oath of office. You're welcome to go with her, yes. Susan, are you taking pictures? Very good. Susan O'Grady is our public relations person, our director of communications. So I'll let Kapua have the honors.
Kapua, you didn't know you signed up for this, right?
No. Carol.
Thank you so much. You made this.
That I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Obey and defend the Constitution of the Commonwealth. And that I will discharge the duties of my office with rigor. That I will discharge the duties of my office with rigor. And you'll take this with you. Just sign it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll fill it out to give this to you.
That's done.
Right here, this out here.
I just need to inform Mr. Bialik that not only is our newest board member an alumni, but her familial ties with the Education Foundation greatly exceed yours. Her father was one of the founders of the Council Rock Education Foundation and actually helped to restructure it when it was reorganized a few years ago.
That's great.
So Bob Schrader, special ed, I think he was in Centennial too at one time, was he not?
After he retired from Council Rock.
Okay. So I'm totally. Well, as I said, we will have some discussions in the interim days about board appointments, and settling up some things, because we have MBIT is with some people now who are taking on other tasks. We are up to the point now of public comment. I will ask that if you're interested in speaking, you stand by the curtain and we will call you in order. And again, it's a 3-minute limit. So that way, I thought Chris English was going to stand up and make public comment. I'm not sure which one is going to win this race, whether it's Mrs. Scarpa or Mrs. Mrs. Scarpa, your 3 minutes.
Yes, Marilyn Scarpa, Newtown Township. I would like to congratulate Kristen on her appointment. Like we said before, you do have huge shoes to fill, but I am very confident that you can do a wonderful job. And just the fact that your father is Bob Schrader just puts you right in there right away, too. So thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison McCann.
Allison McGann, Northampton Township. Congratulations, Kristen. I'm going to go home and text my son because your stepmom was his third grade teacher. Thanks very much.
So we are through that. I will look to the board. Is there any board comment, questions? None? Kapua, if I can look to you just to summarize, we did receive some mail in the past month, and I just wanted to let Kapua summarize some of the mail that we had received as a board.
Please, some appreciation for your words of sympathy for Dr. Thorpe Award and for Arlene.
Ms. McKay. Very good.
And then we also received a letter from the Newtown Township Police Department thanking us for using Newtown Middle School building.
As you recall, at the end of June, they had used the building for some police work. We didn't mention it, and I do want to take one moment before we summarize. Doug did sponsor a tour of Newtown Middle School and Holland Middle School this past Saturday. They are impressive edifices. Okay, buildings. They are impressive. They are something which the district should be proud of. They are also something which I will say that I think that Doug has a great deal of opportunity to take pride in those. These are projects. Doug has been with us a number of years, and he's been taking care of a lot of buildings that have been aging and enduring. And these are ground up. Well, one is not ground up. It is pretty much ground up. Impressive structures, well done for Dewey Engineering, well done for you, Doug. We are looking forward to the dedication ceremony, and I think most importantly, you have 2,000 kids who are looking forward to being in a beautiful new building in both cases. Any other items for the board, benefit of the board? With that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, yeah.
See you again.